Welcome to the Build Better Blueprint, the podcast where we discuss the foundations of real estate, entrepreneurship, and personal growth. Join Christian Cardamone as he shares insights, strategies, and stories that will empower you to level up your business, your lifestyle, and your impact. Let's build a better blueprint for success, starting now.
Hey, this is Christian Cardamone. Thanks for tuning in. This is the Build Better Blueprint. Today's guest is the definition of what happens when hustle meets strategy. Back in 2018, Ryan Thomson was earning just $30,000 a year as a social worker, burnout, underpaid, and searching for a way out. Instead of settling, he started devouring everything he could get his hands on. Set for life, rich dad, poor dad, and hours of bigger pockets. Two quotes lit the fire. What's the worst that can happen? And live like no one wants for a few years, and you can live like no one can for the rest of your life. Fast forward less than 5 years, Ryan, now better known as the Assumable Guy, has built a property portfolio that completely covers his cost of living. He started a single garage conversion and a $20K loan and hasn't looked back since. From student rentals and Airbnb house hacks to burrs and creative studio additions, Ryan has used every tool in his kit to scale his income while keeping his lifestyle lean and intentional. He recently left his 9-to-5 to go full-time in real estate, and today he's become the go-to authority on assumable mortgages, helping everyday investors and house hackers lock in 2 to 3% rates with less than 10% down. If you're wondering how to thrive in a high-rate, low-inventory world, this episode is your blueprint. So let's welcome to the show, Ryan, the Assumable Guy Thomson. Hey, man, how are you?
Hey, Christian. I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Awesome, man. It's my pleasure. That's a cool intro. There's a lot to unpack here, but I love that basically the big takeaway right out of the gate is you left your 9-to-5 for you too, which is awesome. The world needs both. We need entrepreneurs and we need, 9-to-5 W-2s, but my lane is the guy who works for himself, the guy who goes out and kills what he eats, and the hustler. And it looks like you and I are cut from the same cloth, man. So I'm excited to chat with you today.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I'm great to meet you and talk about this stuff.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit about kind of you, where you live now, what you're doing day to day, and kind of how it started. We've got the intro there, but I want you to introduce yourself to our audience a little bit.
Sure. Yeah, I think it's helpful to go back to probably graduating college and thought about going to med school and doing that, but got really interested in social work, applied for Teach for America. Did 2 years in Chicago, teaching on the west side of Chicago, and really enjoyed working with at-risk youth. Loved the mountains. Found a job out here doing social work, and I came out here to do social work. I ran an urban garden and a wood shop, and basically the job, vocational and educational coordinator at this halfway home that took youth coming from juvie and helped reintegrate them into the community by getting them ready for all the things they needed for that. And so did that for 5 years, and the last year of that, I slowly was recognizing, okay, I'm getting burnout. This job is very difficult. I'm getting plates thrown over my head. I'm trying so hard to help. And we had some great success stories, but you see a lot of kids go back to jail and drugs, and it just burned me out. And that last year, I stumbled upon financial freedom and the idea of financial freedom and real estate investing. I was coming over from a ski trip with a buddy, loved the Colorado outdoors. That was the big draw here, right? Mountain biking and skiing. Coming home, and he had a Bigger Pockets podcast on, and it was a whole new world. I didn't realize that people could buy investments that could replace their income and create freedom for them to focus on building a business, life, travel, health, right? Like it was such a W-2 job just built into me. And I thought that was the path. And so that one podcast was very eye-opening for me. And it set me down a journey of reading a ton of books about financial freedom. And it also set me and a ton of podcasts on like real estate investing. And so I consumed all of that education for probably a year. And then I saw a sign on a light pole, and it was ruined with rain. Like I could not quite make out the four last numbers of the. Now I was almost going to guess. There was one or two that were close, and maybe the next light pole will have another sign. And it did. And it was the guy that had 5 properties in the area that was renting to students. And I lived in that area near the college in UCCS in Colorado Springs. Like, this guy's doing what I want to do. I need to call him. So I called him and I said, hey, can I take you to lunch? I want to do what you're doing. He said, I'm too busy, but I'll take you on some property tours. And he took me on some tours, saw his properties. And then, I didn't realize it, but he was a real estate agent. And he basically walked me through how to buy my first 2 properties and convert the garages, introduced me to contractors, drew up a plan for me, took me to the building department, and I was off and running with my house hacking.
Dude, that's awesome. Did he end up being your agent and representing you for those first 2 deals?
Yeah, he was the agent for the first 2 deals, and I can't stress like having a good agent that like doing what you want to do, right? Like he did so much for me that I was like, am I missing something? Like what's in this for him, right? Besides like the commission, obviously, but the amount of connections he made, contractors he lined up for me, getting graph paper and like drawing it. He would do this funny walk and pace out the rooms to do like a measurement, and he just like drew it off for me, took it to the building department and helped me get it approved. The plans to start converting the garage for my first property, and then did the same thing for the second.
That's crazy, man. That seems possibly, I hate to say above and beyond what most realtors would do, because it's kind of sad, because us both being brokers and being in the business and the industry, I don't know about you, I always try and do as much as I can, because I love when an investor or someone young wants to buy their first property and get into it, and they're like stoked on it. And I want to impart as much knowledge and wisdom as I can on them, and help them, because when you help that first person hit the launch pad and then they take off, dude, there's nothing like it, man. And I bet that guy, if he's still around, is probably, I hope you keep in touch with him, because I bet he's got to be thrilled to see what he helped create.
Yeah. Yeah. We keep in touch and we talk, and he's thrilled. And, he showed me his commission check on one of the closings and was like, you need to get your license. And, after the third property, I quit my job and went full-time real estate because I had my license. So yeah, he's been huge. I tell him I've given presentations at our local real estate meetup where I tell my story, and I give a shout out to him, and I've sent it to him and say, hey, watch this, and kind of surprise him with like, this guy was my mentor that helped me really get started in this.
That's awesome, dude. Well, and I think that also kind of hits another point, that in real estate, it's really important. The 2 things I think that are the biggest takeaways from that story are, you've got to get educated first and foremost, which you did, because it was just reading, just consuming podcasts and studying people who have done it before, showing the model. And then secondarily, you need to have a mentor, or you need to have somebody who physically can be engaging and interacting with you to kind of hold your hand from the beginning. And that can be, the material's out there, so it's easy for someone to go and find it. There's no shortage of content these days on strategy and education, but the challenge can be finding someone who wants to take the time and energy to do what that guy did for you. But if you're that person on either end, there's dividends to be paid and earned if you actually go through that. And so I think that's really cool, man. Tell us, what point did like the light bulb go off where you're like, wow, I can do this? Like before you actually quit your W-2, what was the turning point where you realized you were going to do that?
Yeah. I think it was once I bought the first house, got the rooms rented, and got the garage converted, because I bought this property in $260,000 in Colorado Springs, 4-bed, and it had this funky tandem garage where you could drive into the first garage, and then there was a garage door at the back, and you could drive through the second garage. So it had 2 garages, and he was really big on the student rentals and said, if you want to make them work, you need 5 bedrooms. And at the time, that was the most you could rent to like unrelated people. So he's like, you got to have 5 bedrooms. The best way to do this is to find a house where you can do that. This house was listed as 3.2. And we went in there and like, this is clearly 4 bedrooms. And this garage is your 5th bedroom. And because of my education and what I've been consuming, I was like, that's not a bedroom. That's a studio apartment that I'm going to Airbnb. And so, like I said, he helped me convert that. Yeah. We turned it in a studio. We put a bed up, it's a studio apartment with the bathroom off of the side of it. We cut into the laundry room of the other house, and we put a little kitchenette. And then I rented out 3 bedrooms. My mortgage was $1,600. I was making $3,200 easily in rental income. And so I was living for free and 2xing my mortgage. And I thought, man, if I could do this a couple more times, I'm replacing my $30,000 a year social work salary. Like this is what everyone's been talking about. Like this is absolutely possible. And so yeah, that's when the light bulb went off, and I started planning for, how do I do this again the next year? I started talking to lenders. How do I qualify? Well, if you get a lease for this property, you can cancel out your debt on your DTI and go buy another one and do it again. And so in a year, like to the date, I bought the second one, converted a garage, did the same exact thing, 2x the mortgage. And I was like, I'm well on my way to making this happen.
Dude, I love that. That's awesome. And so when you put these pieces on the table and then started putting them into place, this was like your strategy based on what you had initially learned, and then you did it and saw proof of concept. The light bulb goes off. You're like, wow, this is how it goes from here. So I want to know, like, from here, did you map it out, and do you have a goal now as to like a horizon? Do you have a strategy in place, or are you right now kind of still in the throes of this is happening? Because it seems like it's been a couple years, so you're still in the mix and you're still in the building stage of this empire. So walk us through like kind of your blueprint, if you will. Like if someone's listening today, they have zero doors and they want to follow in your footsteps. Tell us the first couple things that they need to be doing to get where you are, and then follow along.
Yeah. I mean, the first thing is education, right? And then the second thing is connecting with the mentor or real estate agent. There's nobody better to be your mentor than a real estate agent, because they are financially incentivized to help you and to help you succeed. And if you succeed doing this, you're going to buy multiple properties with them. So they're going to give you great information and education and point you where to go. Yeah, I would say if someone wants to start at education, right? Bigger Pockets is a great place to start. I've got a list of books I'm happy to share with folks, and connect with an agent that specializes in doing something that you want to do. My strategy for what's next is, so I got those two houses. I transitioned my full-time job to software sales and did really well in that. And then I bought a third property a year later that was a duplex, and I lived upstairs and rented the bottom. After that, buying that, I realized that my rental income was going to cover my expenses. And so I quit my software sales job and I went full-time real estate agent. Then I had to wait 2 years. So I bought an investment property with the partner, and then I bought a fifth property, converted basement, live in the top. And so I've got 5 properties now that probably generate 40 to 50K in passive income a year, which is fantastic and more than my social work job, and absolutely has set me up to go all in on my real estate business. And so my goal for my path is to get to my first goal, stepping stone along the way, is I want 100K in passive income. That's the number I'm after. 100K in passive income. I get to live a life that's very comfortable and can really do what I want to do. And so I can work real estate as much as I want. I can keep doing business if I want, but I don't have to. And so that's my goal. And the way to get there is to do a really good job as a real estate agent and build that business so that I have more income to qualify, more income to invest, and I can keep buying investment properties.
Yeah, that's a great plan, man. It's a great strategy too. And I love the fact that you're taking the advice from the folks that you're surrounding yourself with and reading from and being mentored from by getting your license. I think that's a huge asset. And a lot of people don't do that. But if you're going to be a real estate investor, a lot of people say, I don't want the liability or whatever. But if you get licensed and then you affiliate with the firm, just getting access to that network, getting access to the MLS, getting access to all the other agents is like the cheat code for, it's legal inside baseball for all intents and purposes. And so if you're going to be serious about it, I feel like you're crazy if you don't. And on the flip side of that, I can't understand agents who don't invest themselves, because that's something that if I'm an investor and I'm looking to buy real estate, you become the most attractive option right out of the gate because you're actually doing it. You're not just like a wealth manager who's only got like a $100,000 net worth. I want like a decamillionaire wealth manager talking to me, someone who's been down that road and who's actively doing it. And so that you walk the walk and talk the talk. How important has that been for you in your real estate career?
Yeah, I think being able to leverage that to people that say, hey, I've got 5 properties and I house hacked my way to that, and I can leverage that experience. I tell people you can leverage that experience to do the same thing, and I will walk you through how to do that. And I think I'd be very skeptical working with an agent who, says to investors, here's a great investment and here's the value of investing in real estate, but I don't actually do this myself.
Yeah, I'm not gonna take the risk. You go for it. It looks like it's a good risk, but I'm not gonna do
Right.
it. That's a red flag.
Red
dude.
flag. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. So do you feel like a little bit compelled from the beginning because you were shown the way from this awesome mentor? Is that kind of how you're treating your MO as an agent now, to do the same with your clients?
Yeah, I think like my whole career in life, there's this undertone of I want to help people and I want to see people succeed. And so I think it's important. It's really important to me to avoid to avoid burnout and just to like enjoy life and feel a purpose is to help people. And so I did that in social work. Someone did that for me in real estate, and now I get to help my clients in the same way. I absolutely love it when I see clients succeed and they come back to me for, second property, third property.
Yeah, man, I can empathize with that for sure. It's a good feeling when you help someone and you make money. It's like that's when you know you made a good career choice, and lifestyle choice for that matter. So okay, so you're 5 properties in, you're selling real estate as a broker. You basically have achieved, a level of financial freedom where all your living expenses are covered. So now you're playing with house money, which is awesome. Tell us about, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. Tell us about a time where something's happened, or maybe a setback or a failure where you maybe were second guessing this whole thing. Is this as easy as I thought it was going to be, or is this, or tell us a little bit about something like that.
Yeah, man, every January through March, I think, when sales really slow down. I would say a year ago, right? My first brand was House Hack Colorado Springs, and I was helping house hackers in Colorado Springs do what I did. The second brand I have now is the Assumable Guy, and we can talk about that because it kind of pivots to that. But house hacking was really easy to do, and my story was really easy to do from 2017 to 2022, right? Before housing prices doubled and rates tripled. And so I was doing a ton of business right off the bat with House at Colorado Springs and leveraging my experience and attracting clients and helping people house hack. But as prices doubled and rates tripled, the ability to scale, you needed to be able to turn your property into a long-term rental or get a lease, cancel out your debt so that you could then go qualify for the next one. But nobody, because the rates had increased and that monthly payment had gone up so much because of rates and prices, that nobody could get a lease to cancel out enough of their mortgage to scale to the next one. Like they would be losing money on that, which I think is arguably still a good investment, but because you're paying down your loan, you got tax benefits, it's appreciating, right, over the long run. People weren't that excited to be negative, and the goal for a lot of these folks was to scale and to get passive income. And so that strategy started to dry up and my business started to dry up. And so I was started to become concerned, like this is not going to work, right? I went from 23 sales to 18 sales to 11 sales, right? In 3 years. And it's like, this is not good. I need to pivot. And so I stumbled upon Assumable Mortgages and realized this is the answer. This allows, if you don't know Assumable Mortgages, and we can talk more about it if you want, but it basically, the seller can transfer the loan to the buyer and the buyer pays their seller their equity. So if the home's worth 420, the loan balance is 400 at 2.5% interest rate. You give the seller 20K and they give you their loan at 2.5% interest rate.
So yeah, let's double click on that for a sec, because I know right now with rates at 6-7%, when half the country got in and refinanced or purchased at 2.5 to 4, that's a huge opportunity, and that gap is where fortunes can be made right now, or just you can still basically achieve positive cash flow. So how does someone do that? Like, let's walk us through that, because is it only I know VA is like always been assumable, and that's an easier process, but are Fannie Freddie products conventional assumable? Tell us what that looks like, and also options for how to find or source the money for that equity gap.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, any FHA and VA loan are assumable, and it's in their documents. It's in their loan docs. It's a benefit to the seller if they use a VA or FHA loan, that when they go to sell, they can allow a future buyer to assume their mortgage. So the servicers legally have to make it happen. How do you get money for the equity gap? I mean, I have equity gaps from $0, right? I've had an investor get a property with $0 down all the way up to hundreds of thousands, right? And at some point the numbers break down. It doesn't make sense to put that much down even for a great rate. But you can put it with cash. You can use your HELOC. You can use a personal line of credit. You can use a gift. And I have lenders, if you're trying to buy this as a primary, if you put 5% down, the lender will loan the rest of the equity gap at the Wall Street Journal prime rate plus 1.5. you can actually get a second mortgage, and it's a piggyback HELOC on the property you're buying to buy
Really?
that property. So that's for homeowners. If you're an investor, you've got to put 20% down, and then they'll loan the rest of the equity gap. But sometimes, like I said, those equity gaps are way less than 10% down, and you're getting an investment property now for way less than 10% down and a rate in the 2s or the 3s.
Yeah. So what's the difference, or what's the argument to not try and push for like just a subject to? I know that can be a little scarier for folks. Assumable is a situation where the seller actually gets to step away from any legal obligation and you assume their loan. So you step into their shoes. Whereas a subject to, technically on paper, the seller's still a party to this whole contract. And I know that's very in vogue right now because it can kind of be, it can be used as like a last alternative or a last ditch effort or like a lifeline for someone who needs it. But those are really good opportunities too if you're in that space and you're smart and you know what you're doing. Do you have any experience with that, or have you seen that in your market?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great distinction, right? Sub 2 is, in my mind, sub 2 guys will hate this, but I think it's a little bit of a gray area, right? Like, you need a ton of cover your ass legal paperwork and the know-how to make a sub 2 work. There's not a lot of title companies that'll do it, because if they help a buyer get around the due on sale clause by not telling the bank that it's being transferred to the new buyer, then they'll lose the ability to do VA and FHA title work. So that's a huge risk for title companies, huge risk for agents. And it's really only appeals to sellers usually that are in like more of a distressed situation and need to sell their home. There certainly can be a win-win there, but it's a much tougher sell to a seller who is not in a distressed situation, and much more risk for that seller. And then there's risk to the buyer, right? If the bank, which I know it's rare, but they call the due on sale clause, and then now you as the buyer got to figure out, how do you get this back in the seller's name, or how do you sell this property? And sub 2 guys have all got ways around that, but some buyers are not comfortable with that. A lot of sellers, rightly so, are not comfortable with that. And so the assumption is this fully legal way where the lender is involved the whole process to basically do the same thing: low money down, potentially, and getting a killer rate, reaching back in time and getting a killer rate.
Yeah, I think if for me personally, I haven't purchased any sub 2 properties. I would be open-minded to it. I've been approached about a couple opportunities, but I would do it if it was like a no cash out of pocket above and beyond just taking their note subject to existing. I don't feel like there's just enough opportunity out there to go and get something more traditional for me where I have actual stake versus you're basically getting into business with someone that you've never met before and you just pitch them something. And if something were to change at some point in time, there's too many ways for it to go sideways that outweigh the benefit of it, unless there are those circumstances where it's like, dude, this is, like you said, if someone's distressed and you're actually offering a solution, I think that's the perfect case for a subject to. And in that regard, there's a ton of money to be made that way. It's a unique play, and it's kind of new to our market. Probably in the last, what'd you say, 4 to 5 years, probably it kind of became mainstream.
Yeah, I think since rates started increasing, this got popular, both sub 2, and then I think assumables were probably even slower on the uptake, but they've been irrelevant for 40 years. Rates have just pretty much been decreasing on a trend line since the 80s. And so everyone's relearning how to do these.
Yeah, well, I think, and it's funny that you said that. And that's why I was excited to talk to you today, because I had a lender on the show maybe a couple months ago, but he does a lot of VA stuff like that. And I know VA has always just been the one that people think is the only option for assumable. So how are you, if I came to you and I was like, dude, Ryan, help me find an investment property, how are you searching for these things to find the right candidates to see if they are?
Yeah, so any VA loans assumable, any FHA loans assumable. FHA, you got to make it your primary home for a year. You got to intend to move in 60 days and intend to live there for a year. If not, you can get it can be loan fraud. FHA, not assumable by investors. VA is technically assumable by anybody. There's so many nuances to that, and I can quickly talk about that. And if you want to go deeper, we can go deeper. But VA,
do they have to be a veteran to assume?
No, you do not. Nope.
Okay, gotcha.
So a VA loan can be assumed by anyone. You can assume it as a primary without being a veteran. You can assume it as an investor, or you can assume it as another veteran. And there's distinctions to all three of those. If you are another veteran, right? Well, let me back up. A VA loan, the veteran who served has access to the VA loan, which is a 0% down loan, right? Which is a massive benefit to that veteran. one of the greatest loan products out there. And so that veteran has a certain amount of entitlement that they can use, usually up to the county loan limit. In Colorado, they can use that loan up to $800,000. And so if they got a $400,000 loan on this property, they could go get another house with that VA loan, zero down on another $400,000 property. But if they use like $700K, they've only got $100K left. That's VA entitlement. If they let another veteran assume it, and this veteran uses their entitlement, this seller frees up all of their entitlement, and they can go use their full VA loan for another property. If they do not need or do not want that full entitlement, they can let an investor or someone that's going to make it a primary home that doesn't have VA entitlement assume their loan. And so a lot of reasons that a veteran would be willing to do that. Maybe they're doing really well. They just go put 20% down on the property. They've got a spouse that also has VA entitlement. They've got enough left where they're going that they can use their VA loan again, sell this property maybe for a premium or quickly by doing the assumable and opening it up to more people, and then go use their entitlement. So that's kind of the nuances of VA entitlement. And what I do, if you're an investor and you come to me and you say, hey, I want to buy an assumable as an investor, is every VA loan that's for sale, that's on the market. A couple different ways of finding all of the VA and FHA loans in Colorado. When they're on the market, I reach out to every agent whose seller has a VA loan, and I educate them on all the ways that their seller could go buy another property without the VA loan. And I ask, are they willing to leave this entitlement with the house, right? Here are the risks. Here's what they can do if they want to, fully leverage this and sell it maybe for premium or quickly. Are they willing to do that? And I would say 10 to 20% of veterans are willing to do that. And so I'll run the numbers on those properties, and then I send that out to my investors, and my investors get a couple emails a week for properties in Colorado that are assumable to them.
Dude, that's awesome. That's such a great niche to have opened up, because cash flow is the name of the game. Obviously, there's ways to build wealth with real estate. Like you mentioned before, you get the loan paid down, you get appreciation, you get the tax benefits, you get the cash flow. That's one of the biggest things that people look for. And so to offer this, that spread between 3 or 4 percentage points between an existing loan and current market rates could be the make or break for a good investment versus a bad one, or a really good investment.
Yeah, absolutely. Some of these numbers are awesome. Can I tell you one example of an investor that bought a property?
Yeah, absolutely.
So that $550,000 property, if he got it at a 6.5% interest rate, his monthly payment would be $1,000 more than what he's paying now. But the loan balance was at 500. The rate was 2.75. So he had to bring 50K to buy this property and got a 2.75% interest rate. Now, even at 2.75% interest rate, when you budget for some maintenance, some CapEx, property management, you're break even. Maybe you're losing 100, 200 a month. Maybe you're getting 100, 200 a month. Like, the cash flow is just pennies on the dollar, right? And it breaks even. Where this investor saw the value was, I'm getting this in investment property for 10% down instead of 25. So now I'm 50K in. I'm going to pay 12 to 14K of principal down a year in just the first couple of years. I'm assuming it in year 3. So the biggest interest only payments are behind me.
Yeah.
And if a home appreciates at 3% a year, that's another 15K of equity. So he's looking at 12K loan pay down, 15K of appreciation, 27K of equity on a $50,000 investment. He's getting a 50% return on his down payment, and that 50K is still equity that he has in the home, right? So the returns on these are better than anything that I'm seeing in real estate investing, and certainly put you in a position to be as close to cash flowing as you can in real estate investing today.
Yeah, it's a great point too, because every market's different. So if you can get it to where, and it's quote, it's an investment. So if you can get it to perform day one, you're miles ahead. A lot of other investment vehicles, you put money in and you got to wait, and you wait months, weeks, years, decades to realize the benefit. But if you could realize a benefit day one, and then one that massive after year one, I mean, it's really a big opportunity, I think, that's probably going to become something we're going to be talking about a lot more. You're probably on the leading edge of it, because in our market, there's just whispers around it, because I would imagine you have to educate the brokers on the other side of this deal and the sellers. So it's probably the juice seems like it's worth the squeeze, but it probably requires a heavy lift.
It's a heavy lift, yeah, because so many agents that are listing properties for veterans and for buyers that bought with FHA don't even know that their seller has an assumable mortgage. And it's this massive missed opportunity, right? Which, it may be an exaggeration, but arguably close to malpractice. Like, they should know this and should be uh, marketing their seller's property this way. It's a massive lift to call and educate a listing agent. Like, hey, this loan's assumable. Have you done that? Do you know what these are? I've closed this amount in the last couple months. Like, it works great. What concerns or misconceptions do you have? There are so many misconceptions and concerns. And no listing agent wants to go to their client and look like an idiot, right? And look like they don't know what they're doing. And so they'll shut it down, or they'll advise your client against it. And so it's really important to educate the listing agent to go educate their seller and feel confident doing that. And yeah, that can be a pretty big lift, but well worth it to find these deals for folks.
Yeah, for buyer and seller, because the buyer gets a smoking deal and the seller theoretically could charge more and a buyer could be happy to pay more. So, I mean, let me ask you this real quick while you wrap up this subject. Do you have to, if I wanted to buy a house that you have a VA loan on, do I get my own VA lender, or do I call your VA lender, or do I go directly to the VA?
Yeah, with the assumption process, whether it's VA or FHA, you are working with whoever is servicing the seller's mortgage.
Okay, so there's no loan officers involved unless you need additional capital.
There's a loan officer from the servicer, right? From whoever that lender is. So you want to get pre-qualified with somebody who understands how to qualify for an assumption, because it's mostly the same of originating a new loan, but it's slightly different. So you want to get pre-qualified with somebody who's familiar with the assumption qualifying guidelines. So you've got that piece of paper so that you can give the seller confidence that if they're going to go through this process with you, you can qualify. So you've got that, you're going to qualify, seller knows you're going to qualify. And then you go through that process with the seller's lender, but they are so slow. They can be, and some are quick, but some drag their feet. Like, the closing process is probably 45 to 90 days on average. And these banks have got to do it, or they'll legally get in trouble and they won't be able to service VA and FHA loans. But they would love this home to sell traditionally, to free up, $500K out there at 2.5% and reloan it at 6.5%.
Yeah.
So,
they've got to hate that.
They don't make any money doing it, hardly any money, but they've got to legally do it. And so they're not investing any money in making it efficient, and they drag their feet, try and get you to go away. But we've got assumption processors that will help push it through, and have got connections with these banks and will hold their feet to the fire.
That's awesome, man. I love it. Well, that seems like a big opportunity, and I'm glad that we got to speak today on this, because I think, like I said before, this is going to be, real estate is always evolving, always changing. There's always new methods of acquisition and disposition. And so you got to stay up to date on the trends if you want to continue to be successful and see what's coming around the next corner. So I think that's awesome, man. Tell the folks out there where they can find you, where they can reach you if they want to reach out and get some insight on this, maybe buy some property in Colorado. Tell us where we can reach out to you.
Yeah. If you're interested in house hacking Colorado Springs, that's pretty niche, but househackcoloradosprings.com. If you want to buy an assumable mortgage as a primary homeowner or as an investor, theassumableguy.com is my website. The Assumable Guy on Instagram. Got some good educational content, along with, making a fool of myself, trying to get eyeballs to spread awareness on assumables. Those are the two best spots to find out more. And my contact info is all over that.
Yeah, the internet is a terrifying place, man. But we're all in this big sandbox trying to play as nice and as best as we can. I feel like as long as I'm not like dancing out in front of a house, I still can maintain some semblance of integrity. So this is my attempt to play in the sandbox.
Nice, yeah. No, I've lost all integrity, and I do some pretty crazy dances.
Awesome. I can't wait to check it out, dude. Listen, man, Ryan Thomson, I can't thank you enough for spending some time with us, introducing yourself to our audience. And folks, reach out to Ryan if you want to learn more about assumable mortgages, you want to pick up some investment out in Colorado. And until next time, this has been the Build Better Blueprint. Thanks for tuning in.
That's it, folks. That's our show. Thanks as always for listening. If you enjoyed today's discussion, please leave us a 5-star rating and subscribe to our channel so you are up to date with the latest episodes. Feel free to share with your friends and keep up the great work. You are on the right path. See you at the top.